Overthinking is the enemy of inner stillness. It traps the heart between what was and what if, stealing the peace of what is. Faith is the antidote to mental chaos. When you trust that Allah already knows the outcome, your mind no longer needs to control every detail. Surrender brings clarity. The moment you release the need to understand everything, you begin to see with the eyes of the heart. Detach from the illusion of control. The more you try to force life, the more resistance you create within yourself. Peace is found in remembrance, not reasoning. Dhikr silences the storm that logic cannot calm. Every overthought moment is an invitation to return. Each anxious thought can become a doorway back to Tawakkul, complete trust in God. There comes a time when your mind becomes louder than your heart, when every decision feels like a battlefield and silence feels impossible. You replay conversations, question your choices, and analyze outcomes that haven't even happened. That's not awareness. That's overthinking. And overthinking doesn't solve tomorrow's problems. It only steals today's peace. The truth is, peace was never lost. It's just been buried under layers of control, fear, and the desperate need to understand everything. But you are not meant to carry the weight of every why and how. You were never created to predict the unseen. That is not your job. That is His. Every time you overthink, you're trying to take back a responsibility that doesn't belong to you. You're trying to play both the servant and the master. And that tension will always break you. Let go. Surrender doesn't mean apathy. It means trust. It means knowing that the one who wrote your story knows the ending even when you don't. The mind finds peace when the heart remembers who is in control. Overthinking is born from forgetfulness. Forgetting that every outcome is already written, that every delay has wisdom, and that not every question requires an answer right now. When you find yourself spiraling in, what if? Pause. Take a breath. Whisper His name. There is power in remembrance. There is silence in surrender. The same heart that trembles with anxiety can be healed by the same one who created it. You don't need to understand the path to walk it. You just need to trust the one who guides. When you stop trying to calculate every turn, you begin to see the beauty in the detours. You start realizing that some unanswered prayers were protection, not punishment, redirection, not rejection. Stop feeding your fears with imagination. Feed your soul with faith. The mind calms not through answers, but through assurance. Assurance that you are not alone, that there is meaning even in confusion, and that the one who plans your journey never forgets you. Peace isn't something you chase. It's something you uncover when you stop running after control. The moment you release the grip, the storm quiets. Because the heart was never designed to carry what belongs to God. Would you like me to add timestamps, YouTube SEO description, and hashtags, tags, keywords for the speech as well? I like your previous requests. Overthinking is the enemy of inner stillness. It traps the heart between what was and what if, stealing the peace of what is. The mind becomes a restless ocean, constantly revisiting old mistakes or forecasting future pain. It begins to drown in endless analysis, believing that the more it thinks, the more control it will gain. But in reality, control slips further away with every thought. The heart becomes exhausted, constantly shifting between regret and anxiety, unable to rest in the sanctuary of the present. The moment that was meant to bring calm turns into another battlefield of imagined outcomes and unhealed memories. When the heart is caught between the past and the future, it forgets the gift of now, the only space where peace actually exists. Overthinking is a silent thief that steals the sweetness of simplicity, making you believe that peace will come only after every answer is known, every wound is explained, and every scenario is resolved. But peace has never been found in understanding everything. It's found in trusting what you cannot understand. The more you think, the less you feel. The more you analyze, the more distant you become from the natural rhythm of the soul. The human mind, though powerful, was never designed to carry the weight of constant questioning. Overthinking disguises itself as wisdom. It makes you feel as though you're being careful, cautious, and responsible. Yet beneath it lies fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being hurt, fear of losing what you love, fear of facing what you cannot control. The mind keeps running, circling around, what if, and if only, hoping to find safety in logic when safety was always in surrender. The heart pleads for rest, but the mind refuses to be silent, mistaking chaos for clarity. There is a subtle form of arrogance hidden in overthinking, the belief that through thought alone, one can fix, predict, or prevent life. But life unfolds in ways that thought cannot measure. The more you chase certainty, the further you drift from serenity. Stillness comes not from solving everything, but from accepting that some things were never meant to be solved. The heart regains its stillness when it stops wrestling with time and starts trusting the one who controls it. Faith is the antidote to mental chaos. When you trust that Allah already knows the outcome, your mind no longer needs to control every detail. The storms of the mind calm when the heart remembers that it was never meant to navigate life alone. The constant planning, the worrying, the calculating of possibilities, all of it begins to dissolve when faith steps in. Faith is not blindness, it is clarity beyond logic. It allows the soul to breathe again, to rest in the assurance that every unseen path is known by the one who created it. The chaos within begins when we try to take responsibility for what was never ours to control, when we think our understanding is the foundation of stability. But faith shifts that burden, reminding us that outcomes belong to Allah and our role is only effort and sincerity. The mind craves control because it fears uncertainty. It fears the unknown and mistakes unpredictability for danger. But faith transforms the unknown into trust, turning fear into surrender. When you believe that every delay, every detour, every disappointment has a purpose, the mind no longer spirals into panic. Instead, it begins to accept what unfolds with grace. You begin to see that what you called a setback was actually redirection, that what felt like loss was actually protection. Faith redefines your understanding of reality. It teaches you that what is written for you will reach you, even if it's beneath two mountains, and what isn't meant for you will never find you, even if it's already in your hands. Faith quiets the noise of mental overactivity. It replaces, "How will I survive this?" with "Allah will make a way." It turns "Why is this happening?" into "There must be wisdom here." It replaces resistance with patience and despair with hope. When faith enters the heart, anxiety loses its voice because faith speaks louder. The mind that once needed to know every detail now finds comfort in not knowing. Because faith isn't about seeing the path, it's about trusting the guide. When you truly believe that Allah knows the outcome, your thoughts stop competing with His decree. You stop trying to rewrite what's already written and start learning how to walk through it with grace. The obsession with control fades because control itself is an illusion. You begin to understand that the same Lord who provided yesterday and protected you in moments you didn't even realize you were in danger will also take care of tomorrow. Faith teaches the heart to rest where logic cannot. It silences the urge to fix everything, to predict, to protect, to overanalyze. Faith invites you to trade confusion for conviction, fear for reliance, chaos for calm. It invites you to place every unanswered question into the hands of the one who already holds the answer. Surrender brings clarity. The moment you release the need to understand everything, you begin to see with the eyes of the heart. There is a deep wisdom hidden in letting go, a wisdom that only reveals itself when the mind stops wrestling with what it cannot control. Understanding is not always the gateway to peace. Sometimes the search for answers becomes the very wall that blocks them. The heart cannot see clearly when it is burdened by the weight of constant reasoning. It is when you release the need to comprehend every twist in your path that the fog begins to lift. Surrender is not defeat. It is alignment. It is the soul's quiet acknowledgement that there is a greater hand guiding what your mind cannot grasp. Human beings are wired to seek meaning. We crave explanations for every loss, every delay, every door that closes. We think that if we can just understand why something happened, we will finally be free from the H it left behind. But the truth is, some clarity doesn't come through analysis. It comes through acceptance. The heart begins to perceive truth only when the mind stops demanding proof. When you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? Something profound begins to shift inside. The same situation that once brought pain starts to unveil purpose. Surrender teaches the heart how to see beyond appearances. It reminds you that what feels like an ending might be the beginning of something that your limited vision cannot yet recognize. The human mind sees fragments. The divine plan sees the whole. You were never meant to understand the entire picture because you are a piece within it. When you stop forcing understanding, you start to receive insight. The heart becomes softer, quieter, more open to signs, more attuned to peace. You begin to sense meaning not through logic, but through presence. A deep awareness that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. When you surrender, you no longer fight against life. You no longer argue with reality. You stop trying to control people, outcomes, and timing. You start living with a gentle acceptance that what is meant for you will arrive at its appointed time, and what is not meant for you will pass by peacefully. This acceptance doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful in a different way. You are no longer drained by the exhausting need to manage every variable. You find strength in stillness, clarity in calm, wisdom in waiting. The eyes of the heart see what the eyes of the mind cannot. The heart understands that some answers are delayed for protection, that some silence carries more truth than explanations ever could. It recognizes that understanding often follows patience, not impatience. The more you surrender, the clearer you become, not because everything suddenly makes sense, but because your soul stops needing it to. The fog of confusion lifts not when every question is answered, but when the heart finally trusts that it doesn't need to know in order to move forward. Surrender shifts perception from, why is this happening to me? To, how is this happening for me? It transforms suffering into growth, uncertainty into guidance, and chaos into divine order. In surrender, you stop searching for light and realize you were standing in it all along, detached from the illusion of control. The more you try to force life, the more resistance you create within yourself. Control is a comforting illusion the mind clings to, a false sense of safety that convinces you that if you plan enough, worry enough, or work hard enough, you can make everything go your way. But life does not move according to your timing, nor does it bend to your expectations. The more you tighten your grip, the more things slip through your fingers. You cannot hold on to what was never meant to be held, and yet the mind insists on trying, exhausting the soul in the process. Forcing life is like trying to control the tide with your hands. The harder you push, the more resistance you feel. The world was never meant to be manipulated by your will alone. It was meant to be trusted, navigated, and surrendered to. When you force things to happen, You disconnect from the natural flow of divine timing. You mistake movement for progress and planning for certainty. But some things are meant to unfold, not be engineered. The more you interfere, the more you delay what was already written for you. Control becomes a cage that traps your peace, convincing you that freedom lies in prediction when it truly lies in trust. Detachment doesn't mean apathy or inaction. It means releasing the need to control outcomes that were never in your hands. It means giving your best effort while allowing space for divine will to shape what follows. When you detach, you free yourself from the weight of constant expectation. You stop forcing doors to open and start recognizing that what is meant for you will never require you to break yourself to obtain it. Detachment allows life to breathe again, to unfold naturally without the pressure of your fears shaping it. Every time you try to force a result, you create internal resistance, frustration, exhaustion, disappointment. You start to believe that peace will come only when things go your way. But peace was never dependent on outcomes. It was dependent on surrender. The illusion of control drains your energy because it keeps you fighting battles that were never yours to win. Detachment restores balance by teaching you to do your part and then let go, to move with life instead of against it, to trust the current instead of resisting the flow. Peace is found in remembrance, not reasoning. Dhikr silences the storm that logic cannot calm. The heart is not healed through analysis. It is soothed through connection. There are moments when the mind becomes a battlefield of endless thoughts, replaying the past, anticipating the future, questioning everything it cannot control. The more you try to think your way out of pain, the deeper you sink into it. Logic has its place, but it has limits. The heart is not a problem to be solved. It is a soul to be guided. The peace you seek is not hidden in explanations, but in remembrance, in turning the heart back to the source of all calm, the one who said, "Verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest." A reasoning is a tool of the intellect, but remembrance is the language of the spirit. The mind tries to make sense of loss, of delay, of hardship. It tries to map meaning onto what feels senseless. Yet every time it fails to understand, frustration grows. The heart, on the other hand, knows that understanding is not required for peace. It knows that the act of remembering Allah transforms confusion into clarity without needing to explain how. Dhikr realigns you with divine order. It brings the scattered pieces of your inner world back into harmony. The storm outside may continue, but the waves inside begin to quiet. When you engage in dhikr, when your tongue moves in praise and your heart beats in surrender, something subtle happens. You return to your natural state of dependence. You remember that you were never meant to control the tides of your life, only to trust the one who commands them. The repetition of his names is not just an act of worship, it is therapy for the soul. It washes away the dust of worry, the burden of overthinking, the ache of trying to understand what was never meant to be understood. Dhikr doesn't erase difficulty, but it changes how you experience it. You begin to see that the storm is not punishment, but purification, a reminder to come back home to remembrance. Logic tries to control, remembrance allows. Logic resists, remembrance accepts. Logic demands answers, remembrance finds comfort in surrender. The mind needs evidence, the heart needs presence. The one who reasons too much about life will always find something to fear, something to fix, something to question. But the one who remembers Allah finds serenity even in uncertainty. Dhikr shifts your perspective from, how will I manage this, to, hey, we'll make a way. It teaches you to breathe differently, to see differently, to endure differently. You begin to realize that peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of remembrance amidst them. There are moments in life when no reasoning can comfort you, when you've done everything right, yet nothing makes sense. It is in those moments that Dhikr becomes your refuge, saying Subhanallah in pain, Alhamdulillah in confusion, and Allahu Akbar in weakness realigns your heart with divine truth. These words are not mere sounds, they are reminders of perspective. Subhanallah lifts you above despair by reminding you that Allah is free from imperfection and mistakes. Alhamdulillah anchors you in gratitude, reminding you that even in hardship there is hidden mercy. Allahu Akbar empowers you to release control, reminding you that nothing is greater than His plan. Each word of remembrance cleanses the mind of unnecessary reasoning, replacing mental noise with spiritual clarity. Reasoning makes you rely on yourself. Remembrance makes you rely on Him. Reasoning exhausts you because it tries to grasp what only faith can hold. But remembrance strengthens you because it allows you to rest in divine wisdom without needing to understand it. When you sit in silence and let your tongue whisper His name, the heart begins to untangle its knots. The pain doesn't vanish instantly, but it softens. The fear doesn't disappear completely, but it loses its grip. The confusion doesn't end, but it stops defining you. Dhikr transforms your relationship with the unknown. Instead of fearing what's ahead, you begin to trust that whatever lies ahead carries His mercy within it. Peace doesn't come from perfect logic. It comes from perfect trust. The mind may argue, but the heart that remembers does not. It simply knows that every heartbeat synchronized with the remembrance of Allah beats in rhythm with the truth of existence. Dhikr anchors you in the now, not in yesterday's regret or tomorrow's fear, but in the present moment where Allah's mercy is alive and near. When the heart remembers, it stops chasing peace because it realizes peace was never lost. It was only hidden beneath the noise of reasoning, waiting to be uncovered through remembrance. Dhikr is not escape, it is return. A return to the silence within, where every word of remembrance becomes a doorway to divine stillness. Every overthought moment is an invitation to return. Each anxious thought can become a doorway back to Tawakkul, complete trust in God. The moments when your mind begins to spiral, when every thought feels heavier than the last, are not punishments but reminders. They are gentle calls to realign, to surrender, to remember who truly holds your affairs. The human mind is quick to wander. It wants to predict, to analyze, to dissect every possible outcome in search of safety. But true safety was never found in control. It is found in trust. Tawakkul is the medicine that softens the heart when the mind has made life too loud, too heavy, and too complicated. It is the spiritual bridge that connects fear to faith, confusion to clarity, and anxiety to peace. Every anxious thought has the potential to become a teacher. When your mind begins to overthink, it is showing you where your trust is weak, where you have begun to rely too much on your own strength. It exposes the illusion that you can manage every outcome or protect yourself through worry. Overthinking is a sign that your heart has momentarily forgotten its anchor. But instead of punishing yourself for it, see it as a divine signal, a reminder that your heart is meant to depend, not dominate, to rest, not control. Each time your thoughts begin to spiral, you are being invited to pause, to breathe, and to whisper a silent remembrance that He is still in charge. Tawakkul does not mean doing nothing. It means doing your best while knowing that your best was never the source of the result. It means planting the seed, watering it with effort, and leaving the growth to Allah. The anxious heart overthinks because it has attached itself to results. It fears loss, failure, or rejection because it believes that the outcome defines its worth. But when you live through Tawakkul, you understand that your role is only in the effort. The outcome was already written. The mind begins to calm because it no longer carries the unbearable weight of responsibility for everything. You begin to experience a subtle freedom, a peace that whispers, I am doing what I can, and Allah will take care of what I cannot. And every overthought moment is an opportunity to practice returning, to walk yourself gently back from the storm of thoughts into the stillness of remembrance. This return is not weakness, it is worship. The Prophet A taught that the heart finds rest when it remembers Allah. Overthinking disconnects you from that rest because it traps you in self-reliance. But every time you remember, you return the power to where it belongs. You begin to notice that the same thoughts that once terrified you now become triggers for surrender. Each what if becomes a quiet, even if what if I fail becomes even if I fail. He will guide me to something better. What if I lose it all becomes even if I lose. He is enough. That is tawakkul, a spiritual alchemy that transforms fear into faith. When you live with tawakkul, life stops being a puzzle to solve and becomes a journey to experience. You realize that nothing truly belongs to you. Not your plans, not your success, not even your pain. Everything is borrowed, everything is written, and everything is sustained by the one who never forgets his servants. The anxious mind clings because it fears emptiness, but the trusting heart lets go because it knows the emptiness is where Allah fills you with strength. The moment you release control, you begin to see how effortlessly He takes care of the details you once lost sleep over. Tawakkul doesn't remove hardship. It transforms how you face it. The anxious mind says, I can't handle this. The trusting heart says, I don't have to handle this alone. You learn to meet anxiety with remembrance instead of resistance. You stop trying to silence your thoughts through logic and start guiding them back through faith. You begin to recognize that every overthought moment carries hidden mercy. It's not a curse, it's a compass pointing you back toward divine dependence. You start to see anxiety not as something to escape from, but as something to lean into, because within it lies the reminder that your soul is craving connection. There is a quiet beauty in realizing that every fear can become a form of worship. When you worry about the future, you are given a chance to remember who controls it. When you replay the past, you are reminded of who forgives it. When you feel stuck in uncertainty, you are invited to trust the one who already knows the way forward. Tawakkul teaches you that trust is not passive. It's an active surrender, a conscious choice to rest your heart in divine wisdom, even when your mind has no answers. The heart that trusts does not stop feeling fear. It simply refuses to be ruled by it. When the Prophet Abraham he was thrown into the fire, he did not overthink his escape. He did not panic about outcomes or calculate how Allah would save him. His trust was pure, and that trust turned the fire into coolness and peace. That same divine principle applies to every heart that surrenders. Your fire, your trials, your anxiety, your confusion can turn into peace when you trust as deeply as he did. Tawakkul doesn't promise a life without difficulty, but it guarantees that you will not face difficulty alone. Every anxious thought that whispers, what if, is an opportunity to respond with, Allah will. Every sleepless night of overthinking can become a night of quiet prayer. Every fear can be transformed into dua. This is how you turn mental chaos into spiritual clarity, not by escaping the thoughts, but by using them as reminders to return. The storm in your mind becomes the wind that pushes your heart toward remembrance. Peace doesn't require the absence of overthinking. It requires the transformation of it. When you make tawakkul your default response to anxiety, even the moments of panic become sacred. The thoughts that once drained you now direct you. The heaviness that once overwhelmed you now humbles you. Every worry becomes a prayer, every pause becomes remembrance, and every uncertainty becomes a test of love between you and your Creator. This is the unseen gift hidden within every anxious thought. It invites you to stop relying on your mind and start resting in your faith. It reminds you that while your thoughts may wander, your Lord never does. And every time you return, you come back not weaker, but wiser, calmer, softer, and more aware that trust was never a concept to understand, but a state to live